In this episode of Clipped and Loaded, tensions are sky high as a panel dives into one of the most explosive debates on race in America. The spark? Shilo Hendrix, accused of calling a child the N-word multiple times.
Did you call him a child?
The fuck you talking
Did you
about?
call the child
Your fucking business.
It is my own business. You call him Okay, why don't you have the boss to say it right now again?
On one side, a white nationalist. On the other, everyone else. And trust me, it gets wild.
Women to say a racially harmful term in front of me because I'm the only one here.
Saying
So
these white people. Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about
Real, by the way. Is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
It's mind-boggling.
We've pulled the sharpest takes, the biggest clashes, and the rawest moments on Clipped and Loaded. During a heated exchange with Piers Morgan, Lilly Gaddis shocks the panel and the audience by openly admitting she's a racist. It all started when Piers pressed her on her controversial defense of Shilo.
Yeah, well, Lilly Gaddis, you posted a defense of Shilo on X. It's been viewed 2.5 million times, in which it was entitled, "White People Are Finally Fighting Back. Stand with Shilo Hendrix." What did you mean by that?
For years, it's been systematic racism. As much as Black people and people of color want to talk about systematic racism in the United States, it's quite the opposite. They get preferential treatment when it comes to getting a job, when it comes to getting into colleges. White people, on the other hand, have been getting attacked relentlessly. Look at 2016 and BLM and all the riots. We just had to sit back and watch people burn down our cities and do nothing about it. So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, ingrained in U.S. society is with white unity. We don't see white unity on
Hang
our
on.
side.
Okay, but hang on. Sorry, just to be clear, this has got nothing to do with anything you just said. This is a disgusting racist woman who repeatedly spews the N-word, first at a young child, and then at the person taking the video of her, does it with complete impunity, does it numerous times. We are talking about a bona fide, unquestionable racist. And so I don't understand why what you've just said to me bears any relation to white unity or anything that you've just said. She's just a racist. End, isn't she? You wouldn't dispute that.
It's not about her. It's not about her. It's about
Well, it is
white
about
people
her.
coming together and supporting another white person. And it doesn't matter.
Why
what
would
she
you want to
says.
support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in the country.
Yeah, that's fine. You can support free speech, but you also have to be accountable for what you say. Would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
I do, quite frankly.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, but if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you? Are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shilo Hendrix is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shilo Hendrix? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
Because I'm white and my
Well, there are no black people in American history. Is that what you're saying? That they've all just landed in America, invading your white country? Is that your position?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they were brought here technically.
My God, do you understand how dumb you sound?
This is stupid. This is stupid and racist. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves: do we want to reward this kind of disgusting behavior by platforming these white people?
Hold on. this sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about.
Myron Gaines joins the panel and things get tense fast. As an African-American often labeled an Uncle Tom, he lays out his views. And by the end of this clip, you might understand why. But one of the other black panelists isn't having it and lets him know.
What's funny about any of this?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting that you guys want to virtue signal and, you know, wag the finger and say she's a racist and everything else like this.
No, she admits she's a racist.
Well, let me
I'm not wagging a finger at anybody.
She's
I don't need to
self-identified as a racist.
Myron, with
racist.
respect, Myron, I don't need to wag a finger when somebody says, yeah, I'm racist. I use the N-word against black people. I don't care. That's a racist. I'm not wagging any finger. I'm not accusing anybody. She is admitting it proudly. Even you can't defend that, surely.
Everybody is racist to some degree. The reality is it depends on, a lot of people want to be politically correct. A lot of people want to sit there and say, I'm not racist at all. We all have biases. We all have stereotypes. We all make jokes. We all are racist to some degree. Now, how racist you are is a whole other situation, but everyone is racist. That's number one. Next thing I want to say, see, I think this Shilo Hendrix and Metcalf situation is a microcosm of a much bigger problem. And that bigger problem is what I call systemic organized. And what I mean by this is for decades, we've had black people literally running around with black supremacy, committing crimes, not getting accountability for their actions, and then they blame the system for it. For example, George Floyd, criminal. Ferguson, criminals. Freddie Gray, criminal. A lot of these people are criminals, and what ends up happening is they challenge the police officer, they get into a physical altercation, things go left, they die, something happens, use of force is utilized, and then they want to cry about the result, when in reality, it's not the police killing black people, it's black people killing black people. And if you want to talk about black on white violence, black people kill white people 2 times as much. And on top of that, most of the shootings in America, a lot of the times, are white people killing, white cops killing other unarmed white men. So this whole systemic racism or police brutality or, oh, it's all so messed up. The reality is this. Black people have been able to get away with a ridiculous amount of privilege in America for a very long time. They're able to be racist with impunity. They're able to call white people crackers without being challenged back. And quite frankly, white America's had enough of it, and the chickens have come to roost. Now, look, am I saying that's awesome? Am I saying that's great? No, but for literally the better part of almost 2 decades since the Obama era, we've had to have BLM and liberalism shoved down our throats, and quite frankly, we're all tired of it.
Right, but just to be clear, you would have no problem with one member of this panel openly saying she uses the N-word at black people with impunity and is proud of being a racist. You have no problem with that?
My worldview on the protection of the First Amendment and freedom of speech overrides my personal feelings. She has the right to say
That's
it.
fine. You can support the First Amendment, but you can also have a personal view about what she said.
My feelings are irrelevant. The Constitution is the Constitution. That's what matters.
Oh, that's fascinating. Hold on. So when it comes to chastising black Americans about their behavior, about calling white people crackers, as you say, about their moral claims about the racist system, you can levy a judgment against black Americans for all the things they do. But when it comes to this woman saying the N-word, and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous. And it's, as the only black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your fucking problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak, and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you.
And my argument to respond to that is this. Political correctness, liberalism, and making sure that we are politically correct and don't use certain words to offend people is precisely why we're in the situation that we're in. For decades, we've had to literally tiptoe around saying certain things around certain people, while the other group of people has been able to have impunity and be able to be as racist as they want to be, as violent as they want to be, without any type of consequence. And if you call it out, you're labeled a racist. The reality is this. Black people don't want to live around black people. I don't want to live around a bunch of black people. I move to neighborhoods where it's majority white because I know I'm safe. Now, this is uncomfortable reality that no one wants to say, so I'll say it for them. Black people commit a lot of crimes. A majority of the violent crime committed in the United States is committed by a small percentage of people, and they tend to be black men. Look, The reality is the reality. People don't want to say it, but the political correctness and being nice and not wanting to tell the truth is precisely this problem. And the reason why you're seeing all the support for Metcalf and Shilo, etc., is because white people have not been able to step up and say what they want to say for a very long time because of what I said before: systemic, organized.
People sound
they don't take
lesser
accountability
human.
for
So
their-
you don't want to live
bring
around
Ricky-
them.
Ricky
You want
to
to use the
respond.
N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable
Is that my
offense.
fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault?
Lilly Gaddis isn't holding back, and neither is Piers Morgan. Things heat up when he confronts her about a retweet from one of the most controversial white nationalists on YouTube, Nick Fuentes. The tweet, a claim about unfair tribalism in America.
You retweeted Nick Fuentes, the white supremacist, by saying he said black people just raised $500,000 for a cold-blooded killer who stabbed a white teenager to death. So I don't want to hear one word about the Shilo Hendrix fundraiser. Either everyone gets to be tribal or nobody does. Why would you retweet that?
Because I agree with it. Because we have to fight fire with fire. I mean, at some point, why are
Nobody does.
Why are Jewish people allowed to be tribal? Why are black people allowed to be tribal? But as soon as white people stand up for themselves, we're labeled a racist. And by the way, you call people racist when you want them to stop talking about things.
No, I called you a racist because you admitted you were racist. Hang on. I called, just to be clear, I called you a racist because you openly, proudly admitted you're a racist. So it wasn't a question of exposing you or pointing my finger or trying to get this out of you. You proudly sat there, bold as brass, and said, yeah, I use the N-word all the time against black people. I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. That's what you did.
Racism is just having a preference. I prefer not to live around black people. I prefer not to live in a country where white people in our country are disproportionately attacked by black people. Where in my country, you can have an Austin Metcalf where he asks a guy to leave and he gets stabbed in the heart. I prefer that. That's a preference. Now, what a real racist is, in my opinion, is seeing someone as less human. I'm a Christian. I believe everyone's created in God's image. So I don't see anyone as less human. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have a preference and say, I don't like what happens to be coming out of this community or that community. How is that a bad thing? How is that not just a preference?
Because you've literally made black people sound lesser humans. You don't want to live around them. You want to use the N-word in relation to them, a word that you know causes that community unbelievable offense.
Is that my fault? Is that my fault? If they have bad behavior, if they want to act in a certain way, if I have to cross the street and be afraid that maybe because of the crime statistics that are very real, by the way, is that my fault or is that their fault for having bad behavior?
That's mind-boggling to me for multiple reasons. I mean, we're talking about bad behavior.
Because the N-word, who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed. Who was a criminal? That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay.
Myron Gaines steps onto the panel with zero filter, calling out the black community in America with bold claims that instantly stir the room.
People assemble and say, you know what, white power, we need to keep our nation white. They're immediately ostracized and labeled as supremacists, and they get banned off every single platform. I find that interesting. And matter of fact, you went ahead.
Isn't that the same thing?
No, actually, it is the same thing. Because here's the problem with black people.
No,
you
it's not.
Hold on, let me finish this. Black people practice the very racism they cry about. You guys can gather together and say Black Lives Matter, Black Power, but if white people get together and say white power gather together, they're considered white supremacists and they get banned off every single platform. Why is that Jared Taylor and Nick Fuentes are banned off every platform for practicing white nationalism, but black people are allowed to stand every single platform getting interviews on a Breakfast Club? Explain that to me. There's a two-tier situation here where black people are able to benefit off of being racist while whites are not. And what we're dealing with right now in America is literally a backlash to this black supremacy has been able to run around unchecked for a long time, and no one has the balls to call it out. Here's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's flipping out over Shilo Hendrix and saying the N-word.
Hey, can I talk to the point you just made, though?
No, hold on. Nobody flipped out like this when the United States was getting destroyed in 2020 because of black protests destroying every liberal city in America. So I don't want to hear it about, oh, she made $100,000 because she said the N-word. Who cares? They destroyed billions of dollars of structure because someone got killed. Who was a criminal? That's the problem in America. You guys get a privilege that no one else gets to enjoy. You could be racist.
Okay. All right, but the bottom line, Mr. Wells, I appreciate you coming on, but the bottom line is the reality of the situation is that if you racially abuse a kid, you can become a millionaire on your site and you won't stop it happening. And if you kill somebody or allegedly kill somebody, you won't stop that happening either.
Piers Morgan takes a moment to confront the CEO of Give, Send, Go, the site where Shilo Hendrix has raised over $500,000. Piers challenges him on free speech, questions his Christian values, and pushes hard enough to make the CEO stumble over his own words more than once.
But let me ask you, in the case of Shilo Hendrix, it seems to be pretty open and shut. This is a woman on camera repeatedly using the N-word, first of all with a 5-year-old autistic child, it seems, then an adult who's filming her, doesn't care, is blatantly racist. Why should someone like that be allowed to raise any money on your site if, as you say, you are driven by a Christian purpose?
Well, that's a fascinating question. I would almost flip it around. It's like if we tried to create litmus tests for everybody to come onto a platform to use it, I pretty much could guarantee nobody would pass the litmus test, because the reality of humanity is that we're broken. This is the whole principle of Jesus in the first place, says, is that we needed a savior, and that's what he came for.
So just to be clear, then, hang on, just to be clear, so that's interesting what you just said. So you would let anybody onto your platform to raise money for anything? Is that your position?
No, the position is that there are laws that define what is legal and what isn't legal, and we adhere to the laws as the framework for what is and isn't allowed.
But inciting racial hatred is a crime, right?
Inciting racial hatred is a crime?
Yeah.
Where?
You don't think it's a crime?
In the U.S.?
Yeah, it is.
I've never seen that as a law on the books, but that was part of the reason.
I'm not even American, and I know it's a law on the books. You're not allowed to incite racial hatred or violence against ethnic groups based on their ethnicity. What could be a more glaring example than someone on camera calling black people the N-word?
Violence and words are two different things, and we do make a distinction of that in America. They are very clearly different things. I don't know of any law. I'd be happy for you to inform me with what that law is, because I don't know everything. I'm happy to admit that. But as has already been mentioned on the show earlier, there are needs that exist outside of the reality of that moment for Shilo. I don't condone the behavior. Obviously, we didn't see the actual behavior that was accused in the moment. What we saw was the aftermath of a kind of baited moment.
Yeah, but she carries on using the N-word to a black person with impunity. That's a racist.
Yeah, well, she might have some racial elements. I don't know. I don't know Shilo
some
personally.
Racial elements. She uses the N-word repeatedly to a black man, and she doesn't deny having just used it to a 5-year-old black child. I'm not sure what more evidence you need that this person's a racist. And my question for you is simply, where is that line for you? You say it's the law.
Well,
but if somebody is literally raising hundreds of thousands of dollars to support them because they were blatantly racist, I'm just curious how that fits with the Christian ethos of what your site's supposed to be about.
Well, it fits loud things that we completely disagree with.
Do you allow people to do
pro-abortion?
Do you allow pro-abortion fundraising?
Actually, there's two caveats to what Give, Send, Go has carved out, and one of them is it's broken into two pieces, but it's the protection of children. So we say we're going to protect children because they don't have a voice. So we're not going to allow fundraising for abortions on Give, Send, Go, and we're not going to allow fundraising for the transition of children.
Okay, but what about a 5-year-old child what about a 5-year-old black child being called the N-word?
What about that?
Where does the protection for that child come in?
Well, that's their parents' responsibility. That's like if my child, and I have several children, if my child was called something bad, I would take my child aside and I would tell them.
You just said that one of the caveats.
Hang on,
you just said one of the caveats for Give, Send, Go is the protection of children. You talked about the transitioning process. You talked about abortion, which is obviously your Christian perspective on that. And I'm simply saying, why doesn't it include children being racially abused? Why is that suddenly the parents' responsibility, not yours as a platform?
No, because there are campaigns that exist on Give, Send, Go.
Well, look, let me just spell it out to you. The way things are going, you're going to make a millionaire out of a woman who racially abused a child. And if your caveats are for
that's
protection,
incorrect.
Well, hang on. Well, you are.
No, I'm not. Because one, we're a platform. We don't make donations to these campaigns. These are individuals that are making donations.
This person will become a millionaire because of your platform.
No, it's not because of our platform. They could send checks and they could send money a million different ways to individuals.
But they're using your platform
avenues.
And you've already said to me you carve out things because you want to protect children. I'm just curious, why is racially abusing a child not one of your carve outs?
Well, what the campaign is fundraising for. So we have to make a distinction between what happens on Give, Send, Go and then what happens outside of Give, Send, Go. Because we can't police everything that happens outside of Give, Send, Go. All that we can police is what happens on Give, Send, Go. So the two instances that I gave were about campaigns that if they were created on Give, Send, Go, that we would, for those scenarios, we would prevent. But things that happen outside of Give, Send, Go, we can't police around. So does someone have the right to raise funds for their security, for their protection, because they've been doxxed, because of a snapshot moment, because everyone has a camera in their pocket? And today, we can see the outworking of this. 3 years ago in New York City, in the middle of the city, there was an altercation between a woman and a black man over bird watching and dogs. And her name was Amy Cooper. And to this day, 3 years later, she hasn't been able to find a job. Because she made a bad mistake, saying the wrong thing in a particular moment.
Well, she
where
racially abused him. She racially
recorded.
abused him. If you racially abuse people, you are made accountable for your actions.
So for the rest of your life, the rest of your
you
life,
know what?
you're shut out from society.
If you call black people the N-word and racially abuse them, unfortunately, yes, it has consequences, probably for your professional life,
No, I'm not saying,
for the rest of your professional
that,
life.
We understand that there are consequences.
Yeah.
I understand there's consequences. What I'm saying is what you're advocating for, it seems, is that for the rest of Shiloh's life, she should be pushed into the recesses of society, and that she should not have a voice, that she should be canceled and silenced. This is what drives people to suicide. And it's this cancel culture mantra that thinks that the best way forward as a society is to cancel them rather than try to bring some redemption into the situation. And for Give, Send, Go, our purpose and our hope is not that we agree with every single campaign. It's why we started a prayer team at Give, Send, Go. We actually call every campaign owner and we pray with them. And we actually talk them back from the ideological edges that they find themselves in by saying, you know what, there's a God that loves you. You don't need to get into this tribal space. You need to focus on rebuilding that relationship with him, because that's the fabric for a principled and moral nation.
Here's the flaw with Shilo Hendrix. She, in her message left on the donation site, it goes on, sentence after sentence, playing the victim. She never once mentions that she repeatedly used the N-word. It doesn't exist in her description of the victimhood statement she puts out there. So it's incredibly disingenuous, because people who read that will not realize, if they don't know the story, that she racially abused a child and then an adult in a most horrific manner. And I'm curious, for you as a company, you take, I believe, tips and donations from each of the donations that come in. Is that how the system works?
The system works on voluntary donations.
Okay.
So the only thing that we receive
just
as
out of
revenue
interest,
from
of the $600,000 plus that have now been raised for her, how much have you guys made, Give, Send, Go, from that money? Presumably you know, right?
I actually don't know. I haven't kept track of what the donations to that campaign in particular to Give, Send, Go
Do you feel
are.
comfortable? You feel comfortable making money out of that?
What I feel comfortable doing is, last week, flying out to Detroit, Michigan, and stepping into somebody's brokenness who had a campaign on Give, Send, Go because their car was stolen and another car was in an accident, and they found out that their 3-year-old had cancer.
Well, it's a different story. It's a different story completely.
And it's a completely different story, but it's a reality of what we use the funds from Give, Send, Go for.
The bottom line is you're making, I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe more, out of a particular part of your site that has been set up by a racist who was proudly racist on camera repeatedly. And you say you want to protect children, but the reason that she is so infamous is she originally, in that exchange, racially abused a child. And you might laugh and smirk and smile,
none of
but
us,
I don't find any of that funny.
You keep jumping. Yeah, I don't think it's funny either. You've put me in a position to try to defend Shilo, which I have no defense for Shilo. I don't defend calling a child something like that. What is very evident is that, one, we don't have video of her doing any of those things outside of the post video. So
where she literally uses the N-word repeatedly, and she doesn't deny using it against the child. In fact, she makes it clear she did do it because he was behaving like one, she said. So I don't know why you're being so mealy-mouthed about it.
So,
the bottom line is she's obviously a nasty racist. She's proud of being a racist. She admitted being a racist, and we heard her being a racist. There is no doubt about what happened. What you're trying to do is cast a little bit of doubt, if you don't mind me saying, because it helps your corporate position, which is you're making a ton of money out of a racist who is going to be a millionaire out of being a racist because of your platform.
If you think allowing this campaign helps our corporate position, come on, Piers.
You know what would help you
you
corporately? If you were genuinely true to your mission statement as a Christian site, that you want to protect children, and you were big on that at the start of this interview, I want to protect the kids, then you would remove her site immediately once you had established in your own brain that she'd racially abused a 5-year-old, which, by the way, she admits to doing, right? So you could just do that like that.
Yeah, no, we could do a lot of things, but in the country that we live in, there are certain fabric elements that make this America what it is, and they need to be defended. So
is free speech one of them?
Have upset feelings.
Free speech?
Free speech, freedom of expression.
Really? And yet, how odd? Because, Mr. Wells, unless I'm mistaken, you have now removed the ability to comment and removed all the comments on this particular donation site, haven't you? Where's the free speech rights of those people who commented? Or are you just a hypocrite?
No, well, recognize what free speech is. Free speech is a prohibition against the government enacting laws to prohibit your speech.
You literally just made a speech talking about freedom of expression and free speech, but you have removed all the comments from here. Why are you suppressing and censoring people's right to free speech to comment on these sites?
We have, as a private business, the right to operate our business the way that
you have the right to suppress free speech. I don't dispute it. I'm just curious why you pretend to be this great defender of free speech when you're literally doing the opposite.
No, what we saw very clearly in this situation was a campaign for Carmelo Anthony, and on the back of it, a campaign for Shilo, and they were competing off of each other, and they were in a cycle of vitriolic tornado of sorts. And we said we need to put some calming effect on this by removing the back and forth element that's going on in this particular situation. It wouldn't necessarily have happened if these campaigns were completely independent, months, years apart from each other.
As a Christian again, because I'm told that the Give, Send, Go site for Luigi Mangione, who we saw allegedly executing a healthcare boss in cold blood. I don't think there's much allegedly about it, but we'll let the process take its course. He's got nearly £1 million for his defence via your site, and you know it's sort of odd, isn't it? Is it not an inconsistency in your Christian position on this? That on the one hand,
it shows your lack of understanding what Christian faith actually
Let me ask you the question. On the one hand, if you want anything pro-abortion on your site, that's a no-no because you're all pro-life, and yet on the other hand, you're helping a bunch of alleged murderers raise millions. Do you not see an inconsistency with your Christian hat on?
Well, it just actually goes to the shallow misconception of Christianity that you have, and I would implore you, Piers, to go after reading the Bible for what it says. That the number one critique of Jesus by the religious leaders,
is ringing quite loud in my head.
The number one critique of Jesus by the religious leaders of the day was that he hung around with the prostitutes, the drunkards, and the sinners. He was the guy that went to the lowliest of low places, and he actually shared hope in the midst of the worst places. We find ourselves in a very similar situation, and our goal at Give, Send, Go is to share hope to people in the midst, and part of that is navigating how we do it. We have a prayer team that calls people and prays with them, actually shows them that they're valuable. We have an initiative, like I was mentioning earlier.
All right, but the bottom line, Mr. Wells, I appreciate you coming on, but the bottom line is, the reality of the situation is that if you racially abuse a kid, you can become a millionaire on your site and you won't stop it happening. And if you kill somebody or allegedly kill somebody, you won't stop that happening either. But with your Christian hat on, if somebody wants to put anything up that's pro-abortion, whoa, not having that, gov. And if you want to put a comment under one of these more contentious sites, your free speech rule immediately collapses.
Listen,
this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be.
As the panel wraps up, each guest shares their final thoughts. Everything seems civil until it's Lilly Gaddis' turn. She stands up unbothered by being labeled a racist. That's when Piers Morgan challenges her directly, even inviting her to say the N-word. And well, things take a turn.
Myron, your last words on this.
Okay. Oh, because I never got to respond to Myron's other.
The thing with tribalism, it's a natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features, and that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is, it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem, and it's what I said before, unchecked systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive. Particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly
I'm the definition of African American. I'm the definition of African American.
And troublesome. And to as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African American in a very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that, you know, this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when black people stand up and say, hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a black power movement. That is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please, my Sudanese brother. So when a black person says, hey, let's preserve our culture, I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, let's preserve our culture. But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and white people say, let's preserve whiteness, it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement was a white power. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. White people say, let's save our country, even using the language of our country. When black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing, just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that says exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree. I'm going to go to Lilly Gaddis and just ask you one more time. I mean, you've been so unashamedly proud of being a racist today, proud of using the N-word whenever you feel like it. You've had a bit of time to think about this. Is that how you want people to leave this panel debate, with thinking of you as a disgusting racist?
I don't really care what people think about me. As long as you care about what people think about you, you have no power and you lose your country. What I care about is freedom of speech. And if you're not allowed to say the most offensive things in this country, you do not have freedom of speech. I don't care what anybody says. So that's the main crux of this situation. That's what I care about with this situation. It is, we have lived for far too long in a country where you can have your life destroyed. And people say, oh, she doesn't need this money. Her life's destroyed, by the way. She'll never be able to get another job. She's got children to have to support. And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly, and you will
go
not
on, then
have
say it. Say
you
the
will
N-
not have
go on,
free
say
speech.
go on, say the N-word. Go on.
No. Don't invite. No.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here, you and one Uncle Tom on the left here, and asking her to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent, Piers. I understand what you're trying to do, but we already know she's racist, and I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that, and we'll leave it there.